Hello, hi, hope you are all doing well. Welcome back. My name is Elias. Today's video, I'm just gonna do just a really quick reading wrap up on the books I've read in the past couple of months. The amount of books that I read is it's pretty low. However, I'm just trying to be more positive about it, I think. Try not to worry so much about numbers in general or statistics. Just reading what and when I can. But anyways, before I get into all that, I want to thank today's video sponsor, of course, who are none other than Book of the Month. Listen, I'm going to tell you straight up right now, if it's going to be your first time using Book of the Month, I got you. Click on the link down below, use my link, and use the code BOUQUET to get your first Book of the Month book for only $5. You're welcome. Spring is here, everyone's happy, sunshine, serotonin, smiles, everyone feels good, right? And to put the cherry on top, you'll actually receive a hat for free. Mine says book person, and I believe there are different hat titles that you can choose from. So if you've been living under a rock, you don't know what Book of the Month is. They're essentially the world's favorite, if not the best, subscription service, where every month the best curators comb through a list of new selection of books for you to choose from. They have different genres, beloved authors, new authors, or even books you may not have heard of yet. Their main mission essentially is to bring the new best fiction forward. Book of the Month is an absolute unit because they have the best prices for any new hardcover fiction book out there. I am super excited for this month's selection because I chose a thriller from an author that I have read from before that I liked and enjoyed. This one primarily follows a young man who gets embroiled with past killings involving a serious, evil, vicious serial killer. Next one up, I don't know, this one has been getting a lot of hype from my other fellow creators that I've seen who have also picked this one up from Book of the Month, and this is Silver Elite. It's dystopian, fantasy, the plots, not gonna lie, does sound very similar to the other dystopian fantasy books out there, but we shall see. And would you look at that? It's super pretty and hefty and nice, so hopefully it lives up to all that. Again, everything is linked down below, and thank you once again to Book of the Month for sponsoring today's video. Oh my gosh. Okay, so we are going to go a couple months back to March. So in March, I read and finished this entire trilogy. So this particular author that I've read from before, their name is Anne Bishop. I have read a lot of books from Anne Bishop. So this was like one of the first few books that she's written, early days and all that. So this was interesting because the majority of the books that I read from her have all been paranormal, supernatural, and it's really interesting because from my point of view, the way she introduces or writes about these supernatural creatures, it makes me feel like I'm reading about them for the first time, and I think that's super interesting. This set of books that I'm talking about is called The Others, that I've read and loved. I pretty much reread it every other year or so. The romance between the two main characters, nothing happens until like book 4 where they like get to hold hands or something. It's really slow burn, but it's super worth it. I loved it. So yeah, I would recommend that one. This trilogy of books, it's the first set of books in like an entire series, but I read the first trilogy and it's called the Black Jewels Trilogy. Let me preface by saying that I would not lightly recommend this trilogy. It was somewhat shocking and surprising and extremely triggering. Basically, I would look up the trigger warnings, be very careful going in. A heavy trigger warning for a lot of sexual assault. And then there were some really weird undercurrent things happening with our main character, who is a child in the first book. But we follow this character as she ages and becomes more powerful into the person that she's to become in the later books. I would definitely not categorize this trilogy or set of books as romance at all. It's definitely dark fantasy. Romance is pretty much non-existent except for the fact that, to me, it read more of like a subplot, something in the background. Primarily follows this world where women predominantly hold the power. The way this ruling class system works in this world is that there's this majority of matriarch hierarchy in this society where queens and then witches and then everyone else rules, but they're all women. And the men here in this book are basically, you hear the sirens? They're coming for the series. Oh. Most, if not all the men in this book, in the worlds, they're basically all subs. Okay, the women are the dominant species here. That was a really interesting balance of power, I think, to explore. Powers itself, they're all measured and condoned through a set of jewels that each carrier wears. Sort of like a conduit, a threshold to channel their powers. The darker the jewel, the more powerful the status, the person, and all that. Aside from the characters, you guys, I read this back in March, and I cannot for the life of me, except for like major plot points that happen in the book, remember much at all. I don't know why, but March to me felt like 5 years ago. It felt so long ago. I cannot even begin to tell you. I don't even remember the characters' names or some of their motives. I just know that in this world, women ruled, there was power, and throughout the book, especially the first one, there was this really weird pedophilic undercurrent of just this imbalance of power between our main character, who I said before, in the first book, when we're introduced to her, she's a child compared to who she later is in the last book, with some of the male characters surrounding her in the series. I felt like the main dynamics between our main character with the other male characters in the book, it was just so unnecessary. I don't know if you can hear the ice cream truck right there. It was just so utterly bizarre and unnecessary. When I was reading, I was like, what the fuck am I reading? Like, is this happening right now? The atmosphere, the vibe, and the tonality of the trilogy, a set of books, it's very similar to the Broken Empire trilogy by Mark Lawrence. I believe the first book was called like Prince of Thorns or something like that. That series was also super dark as well, super edgy, super angsty, very sexually graphic as well. But overall though, aside from that, the way it was written with all of these characters, it wasn't the worst thing I read. Truth be told, I was just really shocked by the content matter in the book. It's super dark, very graphic, so be warned. But aside from that, it was definitely a polarizing, interesting read. All right, next we get into better territory with some of the books that I read. And the first one up I want to talk about is Bride, my first intro book into the Omegaverse. So here's the thing, I have read a lot of supernatural and paranormal books. I love books about werewolves and all that. Little did I know, actually, I knew nothing about the Omegaverse. I read about knots for the first time, and that was crazy because I thought it was one thing, but then I got confused when the knotting actually took place and happened and locked in, and I was like, what the fuck is happening? What is this? So I went on Reddit, and that's when I found out, like, that's actually how dogs in real life, like, have sex and mate. And so I was shook. I was... did not expect that at all. Yeah, that was very interesting. I did a whole reading vlog with mild spoilers, with timestamps and everything, if you want to check that out, because I go in depth with all the characters. I really enjoyed it. Spoilers, it was a really strong 4 out of 5. It was really enjoyable, really fun. Not as like smutty or steamy as I thought, but Ali Hazelwood knows how to write those scenes, because me actually sitting there read every single word in those scenes, because I tend to normally skip the heteronormative sex scenes, mostly in books. But this one, I stayed through for the entire thing, and I was like, wow, you know how to write, girl. You write well. So I'm really looking forward to reading the other book in the duology series. I don't even know. I also have, what's her other book? The Love Hypothesis as well. And I know that is based on a Reylo fanfic, and I've actually never even seen the new Star Wars movies with those characters. So, okay, so this next book blew my mind. Loved it. However, it wasn't a 5 out of 5 for me. It was still very strong. It was very much so in a very snooze fest, lighthearted way, but good snooze fest. So this book is Daughter of the Forest. So if you have read Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden or Spitting Silver Uprooted by Naomi Novik, Daughter of the Forest is very similar in that aspect. However, there were several points in the book where I felt stalled or just dragged on for too long. Like, there was literally no emphasis or urge to like hurry at all. The main character took her time. In the story, in this book, it primarily adapts the fairy tale where the girl has to make shirts for her 7 brothers within like a duration time period, because they all turned into swans, they were cursed. In order to return them to their human form, she has to make like shirts for them or something like that. So this book takes that fairy tale and heavily expands it. It was really good. I really liked the main character and how it sort of gave each brother like depth and character, so you can relate and feel with them, as well as accompanying her on this journey. And I liked how we went to different parts of the world, albeit like not grand journey here and there, but it was really nice to see her in different parts like of the kingdom. And if I had to nitpick something else, the magic system here wasn't reliable. I felt like it was very convenient as to when or how or what happened with, for an example, one character wanting to turn someone into something else, being able to do so, but not having that magic later on to do something else, right? Like, the magic in here was not very consistent, but then again, this is sort of like a fairy tale, so it didn't really bother me too much. It was very, very soft, very whimsical. It was sort of like a warm hug, a perfect introductory book, I think, into the spring season. I already put the second book on hold in my library. So I've been reading a lot from the library. Like, all of these books that I mentioned, library. Man, my Kindle has been a huge investment. But also, here's my other quick qualm, a little tangent, if you will. So, you know, I love reading, I love books. That's the thing though. On my Kindle, I feel like all the books that I managed to read are just like sort of blurring together at this point. It makes me wonder if that is part of the reason why I don't fully remember like the minute details of the Black Jewels trilogy, the set of books that I read, because on the Kindle, every book is kind of the same. Same format, same font, same everything. Whereas in a physical book, it's something tangible. It's there. The font is different perhaps, the way, the structure of the book, paperback, hardback. I don't know, to me it feels like you're more invested in the reading experience of the book. Just because, you know, it's different from a Kindle per se. Anyways, I've been reading and taking advantage of the library as well. And I know that the library also has physical copies of books, but the Kindle is just, again, pros and cons. It's just too convenient, okay? The accessibility is insane. But anyways, Dawn of the Forest, really loved it. Strong 4 out of 5. So, all right, last and not least, this book I was so excited to read, okay? The other previous book that I read from this author before was called The Sword of Kagan. Let me tell you, that standalone fantasy book blew my socks off, blew my mind, blew my back, blew everything away. It was incredible. I have not read such a strong standalone fantasy in so long. The amount of standalone fantasy books that I could name is like easily only on one hand. When it comes to standalone fantasy, I don't play. I will know by halfway mark if I will love or either hate it. This book is called Blood Over Bright Haven. This is the type of book where the less you know, the better it'll be. I honestly did not know a single thing going into this book. If I had to give you like a vague, really vague description, I would say a young woman is given entry into like this prestigious magic school where she is one of the first women to gain acceptance into this university because it's predominantly men. There, she, of course, discovers and uncovers secrets about the whole entire infrastructure of politics and power, the outside world and all that, and with the help of the janitor that she is stuck with. All right, that's all I'm gonna say. I'm gonna leave it at that. I think it was very, very strong. Off the bat though, Sword of Kagan, a million times miles way better, in my opinion. I think Sword of Kagan did everything I wanted in a standalone fantasy correctly and right. And it was justified. It was so good. I like how this is just literally turning into a Sword of Kagan review, but Blood Over Bright Haven, I would say, is another strong fantasy like standalone from this author. I could easily see this book turning into a full-blown series. There is so much the author could do in this world with all these characters. And with just the knowledge that I have from this world, it's just unlimited. For me, it just wasn't as strong as the Sword of Kagan. Like the stakes were there, but it was very minimal for me. It was very tiny and small, but I feel like this also had huge ripple effects. This book to me though was somewhat, if not very predictable. I could easily see everything coming from a mile away. And I think that's because the author, M.L. Wang, sort of follows this same formula that they have concocted and created in the Sword of Kagan in this book. It was kind of hard for me not to think ahead of what would happen if this person did this, or if this person died, or this person said something. I don't know. Once I read the Sword of Kagan and I read this, piecing all of the different puzzle pieces together in Blood Over Bright Haven was fairly easy because I got through Sword of Kagan. So if you liked Sword of Kagan, I think you will still really like Blood Over Bright Haven. However, if you did not read Sword of Kagan, I think you will really fucking love this book. It was very strong. I would say the romance in this one was a little bit lackluster for me. I didn't really see the connection. I felt the vibe, but I felt like it was a little too fast. Magic system in here is so interesting. I don't know, I'm kind of torn. I kind of want more of this magic system. I feel like we barely grazed over the surface. I wanted to expand and explore a little bit more. Muddy the waters just a little bit. I wanted to name a certain book from a certain author, but if I tell you that book, and if you read that book from this author, you will immediately know the ending of Blood Over Bright Haven. I'm just gonna leave it mysterious and open-ended, so you can just guess in the comments below. That is pretty much it with all of the books I've read so far. Yeah, that is pretty much it. Please let me know down in the comments below recent books that you've read, loved, and hated. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all soon with a new video.